Kick us off here. We've got a good group of people have joined us. I am Jamie Bollier. For those who I haven't met, I am a member of the Association Xchange Advisory Board. And welcome, my pleasure to welcome you all to the November Association Exchange Program. Today's event focuses on an extremely timely topic, AI. Everybody's talking about it. Some people are scared of it. Some people are leaning in. But today we're going to specifically learn how to protect your association's voice. Before we get started, I just want to give you a bit of information about our group. Association Exchange was started by a group of association professionals to provide programming and topics relevant to our industry. We are entirely volunteer run and led by a steering committee of pros in the field, one who I'll introduce shortly. We come to you almost monthly, 10 months a year, to bring about relative discourse on topics that are all near and dear to our hearts and our front burners. You can always check out our past recordings at our website, which is associationxchange.com. I'm going to now turn the microphone over to this month's organizer, who is Ken Shopman. He will introduce today's speaker. For those who don't know Ken, he is Executive Director for the Association of Biomolecular Resource Facilities. So Ken, with that, I turn it over to your able hands.
All right, Jamie, thanks so much. I'm delighted to introduce our speaker for today, Khánh Vũ. Khánh and I got to know each other through another organization, and I was always struck by his enthusiasm and his knowledge about AI, which certainly is something we're all coping with for our own organizations, perhaps for the organizations we work with, the communities we work with. Khánh was recently and for over 10 years, the executive director for the Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers, having joined back in 2011 as the sole employee. He grew the staff to 11 with more than 90 chapters. His background includes a chemical engineering degree from the Colorado School of Mines. And he has an interesting story, if we have time, he can tell about his attempt to break into NORAD, perhaps inspired by the old movie War Games featuring Matthew Broderick. So perhaps if we have time at the end, he can tell us a little bit more about that. So we want to hear from Khánh. So without any more, let's turn it over to him. Khánh, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Ken. I appreciate it. Yeah, a lot of war stories. Anyways, so much for my dad jokes there. Yes, is not to play or play a different game, right? Would you like to play chess? So hopefully you can see my screen. And, with all the hoopla in the last 3 years, really about AI, the question is, how does that impact our industry, your organization, your job even? And so the question is, what can we do with this onslaught, literally onslaught, tidal wave, whatever you call it, this AI revolution that's coming up, the fourth industrial revolution? So if you can see my screen, I think you can. Let's see, make sure that I'm clicking on the right button. There we go. So there was this recent, last week, they showed an AI video, and I have to get out of this because it's copyrighted. So I only can play it from the video, but hopefully you can hear it here. Tell me if you can't hear it.
Not yet.
Not exactly like.
Oh, there we go.
So that was just debuted last week at the Russian AI exhibit in Moscow. So hopefully your intro to AI is not something like that, especially with AI, the theme of Rocky playing in the background, right? So just make sure that we are squared away. I have some questions for you just to make sure we have a baseline of, the experience that you have out there in this wide world. Please answer these questions in the chat. So how many of you are using some type of AI product individually, professionally? So that's 1A. And then if your organization is using a product right now, And then secondly, does your organization have an AI policy? And feel free to put 1A yes, 1B no, 2 yes or no. So that way, because there's some building blocks. So if you've gone through some of this stuff already, I might skip or go through it a lot quicker than normal. So 1A yes, 1B yes, 2 no. Okay, great. Only 1B. Yes, yes. So a lot of yeses, a couple no's. Okay, the no's are coming in. We use AI, but no policy. Okay, interesting there. A yes, no, yes. Okay, good. I'll wait a few more minutes here. Let's see. Yes, yes. I'm on the internal working on this. Great. Yes on both. Yes, it's being developed. Okay. So, kind of, I think, the last 3 years, as people are answering, the last 3 years, what I've seen, and if you track this, it's really funny. If you look, if you know about SHRM, is the basically HR umbrella of all HR organizations and professionals. In the very first AI, back when it came out, SHRM says, do not use AI. Their policy, official stated policy was do not use AI. But within 6 months, it changed radically. And they said, well, only in certain cases. And then they finally created an AI center, right, on how to use AI. But it took them a little year and a half. So I think we're seeing this policy. And thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing, compiling a bunch of AI stuff there. It looks like maybe policy related stuff. But so most of your experience, so we'll fly through some of this quick low hanging fruit. It's like an introduction type of stuff. So really everybody's probably using some productivity communications, whether it's internal, external, marketing type of things that we're using, sending out, whether it's part of Canva AI or Adobe AI, and grant writing and matching. I find that these are kind of low hanging fruit that people are using, and that was the first round of introduction of AI. Something a little bit deeper, that some of you don't have and that you really need to stop and really think about is the AI policy. If you do not have an AI policy, AI will help you generate an AI policy so you can get on chat, Claude, and generate it. But really, at the end of the day, what we're talking about is two key steps in the AI policy. One, individually, really emphasizing responsibility and ownership. If you do have an AI policy, does it address these questions about who owns it? Who's responsible for what, right? Who's training the data? Who is owning the work? Because the first few answers that people say, oh, there's something wrong with the AI, they blame the AI and people don't take responsibility. At the end of the day, the human has to take responsibility. But who is responsible? So if you have an AI policy or if you don't, make sure it clearly identifies who is responsible for what. Who, not the AI. Because one of the famous answers of AI was, my dog ate it, or it's the AI's problem. Oh, something went wrong. The AI's fault. The AI is at fault. No, 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 no. There was a human involved somewhere in that aspect. And the human needs to own that aspect of it, whether it was the training, whether it was the modeling, whether it was the person who did the AI inquiry or the prompting, right? So make sure your AI policy is very clear on who owns which responsibility. That is really key. And then you have to train the individuals. You have to have an understanding of what the voice of the organization is. You know, how do you use it responsibly? What are the traps? Whether hallucination, deep fakes, assumptions? Where are the weakness of this AI model? Each AI model has a weakness. It's like trying to take your four-cylinder car and try to drive it on an Autobahn, which I did, by the way. It was not designed for that, right? Yes, did I go 90 miles in my four-cylinder rental car? Yes, it did. But did it do it well? It went okay, right? So again, be knowledgeable because you have to train the individual on what does this AI training model is before they take responsibility for it. So if your AI policy doesn't address the ownership, the responsibility, and doesn't train the individual, which should be outlined in the AI policy, it should be part of the policy, then it has holes in the policy. The other two critical things as you look through your policy or generating one is really talk about privacy and data, right? Around all the data stuff, whether it is who owns the data, how is the data allowed to migrate, jump from one place to the next. Once you generate information from the AI, who can use it? Can it be exploited? Who owns that data, right? So ownership around privacy, around how to use the data once it is generated. And then always start with clean data, because if you don't talk about clean data, your model and all your assumptions post that is not going to be valid. So again, if you have an AI policy or if you are thinking about generating, please make sure you address each one of these issues. And the hallucination doesn't have to be in the AI policy, but there should be part of the training talking about hallucination, because that's the trip up. Because if we take everything that the data generates as gospel or as fact, we're going to be in trouble. One of the things I complain about to my kids is I hope they teach you critical thinking. I hope they teach you, because that's a skill that AI will not be able to give you. And you need to be able to question the data that's coming out. And that's where the soulless AI comes, is that, the voice of the organization. And here's a great example of that. When we started AI, we had a policy, but we didn't really train our folks, especially around the area of voices. And so they just some of our staff took exactly what was printed out and regurgitated. Thank you for the recommendation, Elizabeth. You're full of information this year. And I haven't seen that book, so I'll check it out. The employee just loved what AI generated and posted, and they were using in LinkedIn posting. And if you read it and you didn't know our organization, you would assume, oh, that sounds great. But for those of us who knew the organization, go, that's a little bit off. Didn't quite capture what we were about, right? And so we sat down with the employee and really talked about some of the language that was used, some of the assumptions that were made. This was a new employee. They were only with us for about a year and a half, and they started using this. And so they didn't understand the full breadth of who we are, what we were about. And so that had an opportunity for us to sit down and really educate the employee, really the soul of the organization, so they could capture better. And after a few iterations, the employee was much better about, communicating who we were. And so that's something that, we'll have to assume. And the hallucination doesn't have to be outrageous. It can be just very, minor, in the sense of, oh, here's an aspect of, of the organization that we thought we did, but we didn't actually do. And so it was misrepresenting the organization on some level, right? And so just be aware that training in these areas, especially around hallucination, there could be a variation of it, and it should be part of the training, right? And of course, at the end of the day, it's about trust, right? Whether it's trust about your brand, your personal brand, whether you use, social media, AI posting about who you are, what you represent, what you link to. So it's about training the model to where you trust it to turn it to automatic, right? It's a process building type. The first time you use a model, I don't trust any model. I question it very, very highly. And now even each model, they're assuming things about me that are not true anymore, right? Because I'm currently on sabbatical. So this AI model that I train in ChatGPT still assumes that I'm a leader of an organization. So it referenced me in that manner, and that it's not true anymore. So again, it's about building trust with the model. It's about building trust with your audience, whether it's internal, external. It's about these things that you really have to put on your critical hat thinking about and really develop over time. So it may give you a great recipe for chutney, right? During the spring, using the greatest root vegetables that are available, which is great. But when it comes to your personal reputation, both as an employee, as a leader, as an association professional, or your organization's reputation, building trust is hard and losing it is easy. So that's something that I want us to really think about. And how do we prevent that? AI is a great tool. I'm all in. I'm all in with an asterisk, in the sense of let's make sure we understand how that model is being used and when it does represent us and when it is off and when it doesn't represent us, right? Both as an individual or as an organization. So we should never lose our thinking cap. My son went to me one day and said, "Dad, will you defend me?" He asked a lot of these type of questions. Will you defend me if the school accuses me of using AI? And I never give him a black and white answer because he's always trying to trap me, right? So I said, depends. It depends because their school has a no AI policy, which I don't agree with, but that's a whole different matter. And so I said to him, I said, well, it depends, right? And he says, well, what does it depend on? And I said, well, depending on how you use the tool. If you're copying and paste, then I'm letting the vice principal have at you because that's not how you should use the tool. And he knows this, my thoughts on this. But if you use it as a tool, if you use it as one of the many tools you use to put together your own writing and develop your own, style, then that's fine. I will defend you. So again, it's about building that trust and it's building your own voice within your organization for you individually. So going back to trust, right? As an individual, I can't emphasize this enough. If you're using AI to communicate, that's the voice that you're putting out there. I have employees of organizations come to me and said, "Khan, I know my leadership is using AI and it sounds so generic, so bland. It's not them, right?" And so they've lost trust, they lost respect, they've lost their individuality. And I'm not saying you can't use AI for writing and stuff like that. Some things are quick response. On some of the LinkedIn stuff, you click on the buttons and it responds for you, right? For the quick responses, that's fine. But when you're being thoughtful around hiring, firing, people, things that impact people on a personal level, evaluations, using AI is okay, but make sure it's in your voice, and you have that trust there. Same thing for organization. When you're using marketing externally or you're using it for grant writing, trust is so important in developing that reputational trust for the organization. You are all representing your organization on some level, right? Whether it's through a webinar like this or it's through, your communication, whether you're writing the grants, be very aware of what that voice is for you as an individual and what the voice is for the organization. Because the employee that we had did not correctly represent, it was a great chance for us to sit down and talk with that employee to talk about the voice of the organization. Both her manager and I talked about what it means to be our organization, how to represent it correctly. So if you had not had that conversation with your leadership or your staff, I think that's a great conversation in the age of AI. Who are we? Do we follow our values? Do we reflect the mission? Do we stray outside? Is there a reason why we stray outside and we represent it outside these values and outside these things that we've already stated that we are? Is there a reason for that? So I think, as leaders moving forward in the AI, it's for us to have this critical eye about how we represent the organization, how we think about we communicate, because a lot of people are communicating via AI and your employees, other people are noticing it, right? The standard. And it's fine to use the quick, hey, I'm back in the office, I'm out of office, congratulations type of thing. But again, think about the impact it has on the trust and the reputation of both you as an individual and as an organization. Okay. And then I can't talk to you about deep fakes enough. There's so many funny deep fakes, especially recently how Sword 2 is so good on some of this stuff. I have some funny deepfakes that I've shared. I do some volunteer teaching at my church, and so I've used deepfakes. They're so funny. But I want to share one deepfake that came out way back when, and let me shrink this down and do this.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, I don't know, Killmonger was right, or Ben Carson is in the sunken place, or how about this? Simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now,
So I had to play that given, all the tension to break down the tension a little bit here. But yeah. So yes, I went there. Yeah, feel free to post any questions you have. And just I want to share some early successes that organizations, associations are having, and then really open up to what you have seen out there, because I know that we're, in a brave new world, as they say. So I've seen a lot of chatbots and a lot of companies advertising chatbots. Some of you have used around chatbots, and the key thing about chatbot is training, and most of these are training, training, training. You got to train it, and you got to put rails, you got to put rules around that, you got to train it with clean data, as we talked about earlier. And so chatbots are proliferating out there. So some of you may be using chatbots. Some of you may be using it as customer service in that sense, and maybe a combination of a chatbot customer service, right? Um, those are, again, around training. What data are you feeding in? What are you limiting? A lot of the apps for annual meetings around questions, facts, FAQs are taken over by chatbots within customer service for helping people who need to reprint their lanyards or don't know where some things are, or looking to create an agenda for themselves. So kind of a customer service interface with whatever product you're putting out there. Knowledge mining and predictive analytics. This is a little bit more advanced. This is going to take a little bit more investment in money and time. If you have the money and time, this is huge in the for-profit world, by the way. This is what my wife with AWS is really working on, is a lot of the predictive analytics. A lot of her, she uses AI to write code and then take those code to integrate AI into it. So it's a multi-layered AI integration. And so this will probably be the next level of value add for your organization, especially for organizations that have a lot of data, who's been around for 100 years or is the only whatever in their industry, right? Just think about how you would use predictive analytics in the sense of magazines. We know that magazines published are items are being, is a tough time for them, especially with open source and open requirements. So what you can do with predictive analytics in that sense, for example, is to take all your dated articles and link them together, have it being analyzed, right, to see which article refers to each other. And then as people search through your articles, then suggest, hey, it seems like you're searching about this. Here are 5 other articles that you may not be aware of that are related to this, right? So this is predictive analytic kind of knowledge mining all combined together. So some of the more advanced features of this are, I know some of the larger organizations that started to do some of this, but it takes time to train it, right? It takes time, and it takes a little bit of money to invest into this. So this is something that you might want to think about if you are going through your chatbot phase already and you're really happy with it. But at the end of the day, the last thing I'll say about this area is AI impact on industry. So a lot of associations are creating an AI impact led by their volunteers. How has AI impacted their industry? This is almost a no-brainer committee. If you don't have this yet, you might want to think incorporating this or creating a committee talking about the impact, because one way or another, it will impact your industry. And I think most associations that are of any size are probably already seeing this already. So you can really, help lead the conversation and create an expertise and knowledge base and value around having AI, talking about AI impacts on your industry or your association. And so that's one thing. And really, your knowledge experts are your existing tech providers. If you have not gone back and talked to all your tech providers, talk about how they are experimenting with AI. If they're not, they're going to be, somebody's going to phase them out if they're not um, already experimenting with AI with their technology. So talk to your tech partners, ask them what they're doing around AI, ask them about their AI policy. What are they doing about data? What about hallucination? What about all these other things and how they're testing for it? So talk to your partners if you don't already. Okay. And with that, I think we're going to give some time to talk about how have you experimented with AI, because this is really the wild, wild west. So I know that you all know stories out there or you're experiencing them. I'd love to hear and see in the chat what you have seen that is working or not working, or if you have questions. And Barbara said something about a policy perspective. Yes, you have to. And I will disclose that, yes, I used AI as part of my presentation. Um, did I use everything? No. Did I create it on my own based on what I read? Yes, I did. And so I think disclosure is better. I think, it's that whole commercial, and I forgot who did it. Somebody calls up and the lady's looking for a representative, but I think it's a bank. It's a bank, and they answer all their customer calls with humans, right? And she's going representative, representative, and he's like, yes, I'm here, and she's like, no, she wants to talk to a person and thinking that it's a chat bot. I think there's going to be a lot of confusion around, and then the guy finally says, yes, hold on, please. And he comes back and goes, hi, I'm your representative, John, or whatever. And so she's like, I think you have to disclose. I think you have to disclose. I think that the more you're honest about as an organization, and then you can talk about how your employees are adding value, right? How everybody fits into this complex myriad of computer interface and human interface, as they call it, the singularity. And so I think you have to have that honesty and those conversation, right? Because if you don't have a policy and you're not honest and you don't train your people, you're sticking your head in the sand when this tsunami of AI is going to wash over and really bury you underneath it. So if you don't, aren't honest, aren't transparent, and don't have clear directions, who is responsible? Where does it end? Where does the human value? I love Sherm's final landing on how they, quote, talk about AI. They talk about HI plus AI, which is human intelligence plus AI intelligence, right? So I think having that conversation with your staff, because I know that some staff who don't have an honest bone to them may assume that they're doing all this great work when part of it is really driven by AI, and their manager may not know and contribute things that may not be true, right? But if you're honest and you have this policy and you have these frank discussions with your team and you have this culture of transparency, then you can have it. Like, I'm boosting my productivity through these AI tools, but yet I'm adding values and creating this better product because I'm using my human intelligence to deliver that. Yes, I agree that some boards are like, we don't want to talk about, we want to hand it in. I've seen CEOs leave organization because they don't want to deal with the fallout with COVID, and they don't want to deal with the AI fallout because they're used to a certain standard. And so they're like, so I see a wave of retirement with this whole AI thing. And that not only CEOs, with regular employees too. So I'm I 100% adapt transparency, being really transparent to a fault sometimes. But then I'm terrible at lying because I don't remember if I lied about something, then I was like, what did I tell them about that? So I never want to be caught lying, and it's not the right thing. So just being radically transparent, as the young folk says, right, about just being honest to a fault, and just kind of letting people know that, AI helped me on that, but this is where I added value, right? Um, I've seen disclosure in some. Okay. Anything else? Ken, you want to join back in to see if there's any questions that were posted? Has anybody
You've
shared?
been you've been keeping up with them, Con. Thanks
Oh,
very much.
okay. Thanks, Ken. Any other stories? I haven't seen any stories about what your experience with AI is. What have you seen? Some things that are cringeworthy. Cringeworthy is always the latest social media stuff. So any cringe story type of experience that you've had out there, or, anything that you learned in this 20, 30 minutes that we've been together so far, 35 minutes that we've been together, that really sparks your thoughts. Yeah, it's trust. So the AI policy will reveal some of the underlying issues, whether it's trust, whether it's interpretation. What we found out when we talked to an employee who misrepresented the organization is that she didn't understand us and we didn't train her properly. So we owned up to that. I talked to the manager and I said, you know what? We should have this conversation with everybody to make sure, especially the new. So part of our change in our onboarding is to understanding the voice of the organization. So we've incorporated that on as part of the on. What does it mean to be part of our organization? What things do we do? How do we advance the mission in specific, not just things that we provide, but how do we make people feel, right, about our organization? What will they walk away when they interact with us? And so those are kind of important, conversations to have with your staff, especially in the age of AI, where everything could be blah, blank, 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 right? Very generic. I'm pretty sure some of these layoffs recently were generated through AI. And it's very impersonal, right? And because of course HR gets involved and they go, "Oh, you can't be specific. The less specific you are, the less likely we're." I have a personal thought on that, but I won't share. And you could probably guess my personal thought on that. But I'm really, interested in the values of the organization and how those manifest through our actions, through our AI voice. And that's why making sure your staff, your organization understands, your volunteer understands what it means to be part of this organization. What do we advocate? How do people feel about us? Just imagine if that deep fake about Obama was talking about, right? And by the way, that was 2017. The deep fakes of Obama started coming out. 2017. We're 8 years into these deep fakes. Now imagine if your leaders, whether it's your board leadership, your board president, or your CEO or executive director, had a deep fake and was talking about some of the stuff that were like, oh my God. Think about the reputational harm. Talk about the loss of trust in the organization, right? The Sora 2 can do that. You can, if you download enough video tape of your leadership and make them say things, it could do that. So if you can help your membership, your staff, your volunteers understand your essence, the organization, the values. And so when they see a deep fake, they're like, oh, that's not us. That's truly a deep fake because that's not who we are, right? And that's the point that we had to get to the employee because they were doing all our LinkedIn posts, right? And so they had to have a very clear understanding of who we are as an organization. So I'm going to leave a couple more minutes. Any last questions before we? Oh yeah, companies are blaming AI. So AWS laid off a ton of people, 14,000. And I was reading some of the articles of people who are laid off. And yeah, it's very impersonal. For a company that does a lot of AI, it's super impersonal. And I think that's where associations, I hope we don't follow this route, is that we are able to keep, because we talked about us, about, within the association of we represent. We are us. We're not a nameless. We are because of here, because of our members. I hope we don't, when we use AI, we don't become impersonal. We don't become soulless. So if there's no other things, I'm going to hand it back to Jamie.
It turns out, Con, we had a couple of questions that I just saw. One
Okay.
was, how frequently should AI policies be reviewed and updated?
Oh my gosh. What is the latest version of ChatGPT, right? With models? What are the new frontiers? I think it should be, and it should be stated in our AI policy. We have a statement that says this policy will review annually, right? Some kind of cadence. So I would say some triggers for reviewing when there are major changes in the infrastructure of AI, whether you're using modeling or you're introducing new massive data or a new, software upgrade that's going to really change the interface, then you should really re-examine it. So I would say if you don't know, put some type of cycle to it. So an annual review is probably good. But at this pace of AI changing and especially organizational changing, if you're bound to be, adopting a new database with new AI features, I would say that's a good time to relook at as you're designing that new interface, AI interface, whatever that looks like, chatbot, data mining, search, whatever, customer service, then it's a great time to review your AI policy. Hopefully that answers that.
Great. And the other question we had was, and this might have been addressed in a link earlier in the conversation, what organization has a good AI policy that would be good to take a look at when developing your own? And I think that Elizabeth shared a link to some compiled policies earlier. We can
Yeah,
put that back in the chat as well.
there's some great work out there. So if you're looking, NIST, National Institute of Standards, came out with some AI data governance stuff. ASAE, SHRM. If you're looking for like broad, if you're like an international association, the EU actually is a leading edge in AI policy. They tend to lean more in the sense of more control and protecting the human, which I think is not a bad thing to lean on. So if you're looking for like really large AI, systematic thinking. Jeff just commented, "Hey Jeff, love to see you join these type of conversations. I know you're out there thinker." I would say that ASAE SHRM for HR stuff. SHRM's gotten a lot better since their very first policy of don't use AI, which didn't work, of course. I would say is there's a lot of resources out there, and as I mentioned in the chat earlier, or in my conversation or presentation, is the AI will generate an AI policy for you, right? But there's a lot of other things out there. There is stuff about governance. So AI governance is kind of a big umbrella, but as we delved into some of the more specific topics of, individually, I think each one of you should think about AI is do an inventory. I had a employee come in with me, a new employee came in. She had a user manual on herself. And it's really cool in the sense of these are my values. This is how to best interact with me. I think if you don't have a user manual on yourself to communicate and talk about your values, talk about how you interact, what are your preferences, it's a great way to think about that on the individual level. And also broaderly, mission statement, what is your vision statement? What is your values? What are your goalposts and things like that are great for organizationally, if that helps.
And then another
Frank?
question we had was about any suggestions if staff are eager to get things moving, but leadership is dragging their feet to get anything in motion. How to
Well,
balance that tension.
fear is a great motivator. Play that Obama one. And if you're really brave, feed Sora 2 with your leadership videos and create them and make them say outrageous thing, right? If you're brave. If not, just say, hey, look, what happens if our leadership, has a deep fake? Do we know how to respond to that? And that's AI in action there, right? I know a gentleman who quit because of a large organization because he didn't want to deal with all the AI because he dealt with social media, and someone half a world away was trashing him on social media, and he spent energy and time of a very large association dealing with it. And he told me, he said, Khan, if I have to deal with the deep fakes of me internationally and the energy that I, just went through with the social media, I'm leaving. And he actually retired within the last, I think, year and a half. And so, anyways, Jamie's on, so that means my time is done. Great conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Khan. Thank you, and please join me in thanking Khan for sharing his insights with us today. Obviously, we could probably continue with this conversation for at least another hour, maybe the rest of the day. The program was recorded for anyone who was not able to join on time or wasn't able to join us today. It will be available soon on the Association Xchange website. This is our final program for 2025. We're going out with a bang here. I want to wish each of you a joyous holiday season, and we will see you in January. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.